As you know, this is the second meeting for our sexual assault prevention program. And for the first hour, we've invited the public to give their input. And so whoever is here today from the community that would like to speak and give their input for this program, we're happy to hear your voice and hear what you have to say. So if you would like to just come up to the podium here, and I'll take a seat, and so whoever's welcome to come up. Okay. All right. So what we'll do first is then just kind of get started with this. Trying to think how we should do it.
I'm Phil Deshane, Township Trustee, and I really just want to make it to you, Bree, to speak for myself, and I presume other board members. We are very fortunate that you've agreed to come back and work with us on the sexual assault prevention in the years ahead, and making us a better police department, making us a better township. And the board has taken certain actions, but you weren't there for it. And all of us were here for the press conference, but you were only available on Skype for understandable reasons. But now that you're here in person, I just want to express wholeheartedly how touched we are that you've accepted our apology, and you've been willing to work with us and to help us to be better as a township and better as a police department. You and I go way back to many years ago at St. John Student Parish, and I knew your father very well and your parents, so we have a lot of history. But apart from that, to today and recovering from this abuse, this assault that happened to you and many others, we are deeply fortunate to have you working with us, and I think we're going to have a great outcome. But thank you again for being here for us.
Okay, are you good? All right. So as I said, this is our second meeting for the prevention program. Of course. There we go. Okay. So the initiatives that we discussed at the last meeting, I'll go through them. The educational pamphlet, the Stewards of Children training program, the mandated reporter training, the school-wide interventions, and we also briefly discussed proactive bystander. And so we'll touch a little bit on this today, but I really want to focus on the first four initiatives. So many of you will have the educational pamphlet in front of you. So this is something I've worked on, and basically it discusses what childhood sexual abuse is, signs of sexual abuse, and how to report it. It also gives parents information on how to talk to their kids about this and resources for that. So I tried to just make this pretty brief, something that we can disperse to the community to give them a brief overview of this important information. This is, just this part of it just has like what we're going to have in it, but I'm going to polish this a little bit and also just make it kind of easy to read. But I wanted to get everybody's input on how you felt about the actual content. So, I'll kind of let you go over that. And then after the meeting and the next days to come, we can give our input on that. My idea was that we could disperse this brochure, like an electronic copy through Meridian Township. And I think Frank was telling me that we would be able to send it maybe out in email format to the community, and also have a hard copy available here at the township, in addition to providing the schools with a hard copy and giving them the option to send this out in an email format to parents in the community. So, what are your guys' thoughts on the brochure, or any other ideas of how to disperse the brochure?
I know that, oh, go ahead. I was just gonna say, I like what you said about dispersing it. I wanna look through real quick before I respond to.
Yeah, in the content of it, I get we'll have to kind of look through. So I guess more about how we want to disperse it.
The libraries might be another avenue for display.
Okay, that's a good idea.
And the Firecracker is available. We do extensive training on Title IX issues and issues with caretakers and parents on how to respond to sexual abuse. And we also are trained to do darkness to light trainings for individual groups.
Okay,
So
perfect.
we can do a lot of that stuff, and we do it all the time.
Excellent. Yeah, and I do have you guys, I have at the bottom, I have some resources for victims and families, and I definitely have Firecracker Foundation on there so that people are able to reach out to you for training, and also victims can reach out for support services. So.
Okay.
All right. And yeah, we can go over the content. I'll let you guys just a moment to review that as well. And you don't have to give like your official answer now. If there's things you want to look at and get back to me on it, we can do that.
Piece about grooming behavior, because people may not be aware of that. You're not necessarily, the victim, but you can be that person that recognizes it.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
that's an important piece.
Absolutely.
I think it's important also to understand that with grooming behavior, a lot of times people they groom entire families, so it's not just the child. It's a complete web of deception that's important to
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people, a lot of survivors have been their parents have been groomed as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so we have behavioral signs, physical signs, grooming behaviors on there. And then I tried to give step-by-step instructions on what to do if you suspect childhood sexual abuse, because I think it's really important for people to have direct steps that they can take. So the first thing you want to do is make sure the child is in a safe environment. You want to, tell that child that you're going to talk to someone who can help. And then I give instructions on how to actually report the abuse and who to call and how to go about that. And Becky, I don't know if I think that I wanted to give some information maybe for like the township on who they could call here if they were interested in that. Do you have?
Do you have a specific suggestion other than?
Well, a lot of ours referrals or avenues you've got listed, most of our
Right.
reporting.
Through CPS?
Right. If
Okay.
somebody wanted to make a direct contact with us, it would just be to probably call the police department. If they have
Police
questions,
department,
maybe it's
right.
not necessarily they're ready to report, but they've got some suspicions and they want some clarification or more information. It would just be local law enforcement or us. And then kind of get more information or draw that information out of those people and see if what their suspicions are something we can look further into.
Okay.
We do get a lot of those through CPS though, through, they call them letter law enforcement notification. A lot of those come through that, but yeah, I think he's calling the department.
But really, I mean, I guess if they have suspicions, then they should call CPS, which is probably their first.
Well, the thing is, some folks aren't necessarily comfortable calling either law enforcement or CPS, hopefully not both, but just depending on the situation.
Mhm.
Hopefully they're equal with one or the other. CPS maybe they're concerned about anonymity and, they know the perpetrator or it's a family member or something like that. So hopefully they're comfortable coming to one or the other.
Okay. So I think putting your information, the township's information on there, might be a good resource as well.
And if they contact CPS, we're automatically contacted, so it's not like if they contact
Right.
us, we won't know. And vice versa. Right?
Okay.
But we received some through the OK to Say app,
Yeah.
and we've been getting some, people have that and they want to remain anonymous, and we've gotten tips about suspicious and or potential abuse and assaults through that app, and it gets forwarded to us. So that's another avenue that somebody can report, especially if they're afraid for repercussions or something like that.
Okay. Yeah, that would be a good one to add to it as well.
It's not the preferred method, but getting it reported, period, is what the goal.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll add that to it and we can kind of review it again. The Child Help National Hotline, that's another one where they basically have a trained staff member who will walk them through the process of making the steps to report, and also give them other service resources. So, all right. So, Stewards of Children training program. We had talked about having some sessions at Meridian Township or maybe at the schools in order for adults in the community to come and receive training on how to recognize signs of abuse and respond appropriately. This is a 2-hour training session. It costs $10 per person, and I know that Firecracker Foundation actually has someone who...
Yeah, me.
You do it. Perfect. Look at that. So, we would kind of look to you to maybe be the facilitator for
Absolutely.
the trainings, which would be excellent. So I guess our question moving forward is the location, which Meridian Township, we are able to have the sessions here, how many sessions we want to have, and how we're going to advertise the training. I think it may be difficult to get a high attendance to this, so I really want to work on our advertisements, within the schools and the community to make sure that we get as many people as we can to this.
Do we know how many folks we can reach in one session? Or is that just depend on facilities or?
Up to 20.
Okay.
Yeah.
20, okay.
Yeah.
So I guess it would depend, we have to kind of figure out what the interest in the program would be. So perhaps maybe sending out an email to the community, having people sign up. And once we get an idea of how many people would be interested, then we can determine how many sessions we'd have.
I think the interest would be high if we get the word out there.
Okay.
We do that properly.
Yeah, especially in schools and parent associations.
Okay.
We have a very vast community neighborhood watch, community leaders network that would be something that we would be able to push through that group. Always use that group to facilitate a lot of things, but this would be a topic that these folks are in a neighborhood, we need the information to them, and then they disseminate amongst their neighborhoods and then bring back who they can. We have very high participation rate in that.
Okay.
And I think it's better, that's actually better than a little emailing. I mean, emailing is one way,
Yeah.
right? But the other way is that these folks are actually talking and having conversations and interacting with each other. You will all go kind of thing, and we get, hopefully get bolster participation rates out.
Right. We can also, of course, utilize home TV and our township's Facebook, social media, Instagram, avenues. The township's communication department does an excellent job of getting people out. And I think if we create an event where we, have the people sign up in advance, then we'll have an idea of how popular it's going to be, and that can probably guide us in how many sessions we need. Because if we fill up the session, then we're going to want to have another one, and I would think that flexibility would be possible with this type
Yeah.
of training.
We can kind of just keep adding them as
Yeah.
needed.
Yeah.
And we can also reach out to religious institutions also,
Right.
like in interest there.
Okay.
Your participants in the past, your experience with your other facilitations, how do they come across the program? How have they been
Usually through our client base. That's basically how we've been doing it so far, but we're also reaching out to schools. So we're starting that this summer so that we can implement more programs.
And do you get a lot of referrals, like somebody who was in a previous session?
Yes.
Refers somebody that way? So
Yeah, we worked with the East Lansing School District, and that, this summer, or well, actually, it was in May, but that was packed. It was at the high school, and it was really just jam-packed, it was incredible. So there was a lot of interest.
Steve, do you think this would be something that could be disseminated through the email system? In
Absolutely, we send
communication with the
out regular
parents?
notice to parents. You know, for me, it'd be something that I'd want to have some conversations with our mental health professionals and our counselors and social workers, just to see what they think the best target audience would be and how we would roll that out in something, that program at the school district. But I'm sure that's something we could look into, especially if East Lansing's done it. You know, we could follow their lead in terms of how they did it, so.
Okay, yeah, so I mean, even locations, we could have maybe one here, one at Hazlet, one at Okemos, different schools. And so we'll have to kind of find a way for people to be able to sign up, go to like a general page to sign up to show their interest, and then as we have people sign up, give more information on specific dates and location.
Is it a per participant cost, or can you do a group cost where you
Yeah,
pay
we
a
can do a
fee
group.
and bring in a larger group to be able to do that? Because
Yeah.
I think that might be more beneficial in
Mhm.
terms of getting more people to come. You just pay the fee up front, and we could raise dollars to do that, and then off of the session, and people don't have to pay individually.
Right.
Which might be a deterrent for some folks.
Right.
Yeah, and in terms of funding, I am actually going to be covering some of the cost of the funding. And so part of the money that I will be receiving from Meridian Township will actually go towards the cost for the Stewards of Children program. And so, you know, once we kind of figure out how much interest there is, I will be covering probably the majority of that, so.
Well, thank you very
You're
much.
welcome.
That's very kind of you.
Yeah, I really want to, you know, use that to just give back to the community and make sure that we are making change. So we will kind of work on the funding with that. And if there's more money that we need and we need to do fundraising, then we can look into that as well. And I know you had talked
Yeah,
about
I
the
think
board as well.
The township board has a budget for different things. We have a certain budget every year, and of course, I'm only one board member, but I had mentioned before that I would be happy to request that the board sponsor part of the
Okay.
education.
Okay. So it looks like we should have the funding covered pretty easily. So what I'll do is I'll plan on sending out an email with specifics about the training and how we can, and then you can kind of disperse it. I'll give you specifics. I'll just basically send a follow-up email about how we're gonna do all of this moving forward.
We've got phone bills, submit that, things like that. I'm certain of something we could probably get as far as for online registration of interest through the town, for our IT department.
Okay.
The website, we can get a link that we can provide for people if they're interested, click and sign up. So
Yeah.
that's the best way.
Okay, I think that probably is. Yeah, so I'll talk to the IT department and see the logistics of that. Okay, so another one that we had talked about was the mandated reporter training. And this is provided by Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. And I actually talked to the trainer, Chris Blood. He's the one that provides the training to Ingham County. And this is a training that they highly recommend for teachers and other staff in the schools. It's no cost. The training lasts around 30 to 45 minutes. What it does is it covers what abuse or neglect is, what CPS does in response, what a mandated reporter's specific responsibilities are, best practice and liabilities associated with not reporting. The location can be determined by the group, so if the schools want to hold a training for the teachers at anytime, any place, he's willing to do that. So the teachers are mandated reporters. And the retraining for mandated reporters is very important because school personnel identify 52% of all identified child abuse cases. So that's more than any other professional organization type. And I was shocked, and this is data from Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. 2/3 of teachers do not receive specific training in preventing, recognizing, or responding childhood sexual abuse in either their college coursework or as part of their professional development. And then 24% of school personnel have never received any oral or written guidelines on mandated reporter training, mandated reporter requirements. And as many as 25% of childhood sexual abuse incidents identified by professionals not working specifically in child protection services are not reported. So even though they're mandated to report, about a quarter of those do not actually report. So, my thought is that having this mandated reporter training, it's pretty easy. There's no cost to it. The trainer has said that he goes around to a lot of schools within Ingham County, but definitely not enough. It's something that needs to be utilized more. So giving this training to the schools, and I can give you more information on exactly how to set up this training if it's something you're interested in.
I know we do some individual manager.
You do? Okay, perfect.
I'm just not sure how extensive and how many of our employees receive it, but I do know that we have the training.
Okay, perfect.
So it's just a matter of just see how
Yeah.
the group is and do we want to expand it, but it's obviously a very important thing, so.
Okay.
And we are, like you said, we are a mandated report, all of our teachers are, so.
Okay.
I think,
Administrators.
sorry, I think that Title IX is now, the law in Michigan has been changed and expanded to include coaches and sort of other, not necessarily teachers,
Mhm.
but any school staff.
Yeah, so other staff would be very important.
Yeah.
And I think that they took coaches out,
Yeah.
which may be added. We'll see later on, but we'll go over that too at the end.
We'll go over that later.
But coaches are still, even if they're not mandated reporters, they're a big part of kids' lives, and they're around the child a lot. So I think that they're able to recognize these signs a lot, and so having coaches, have this reporter training, or even the Stewards of Children program, I think they would really benefit from that. So trying to really sell it to coaches and other people involved in the kids' lives.
Maybe something we could do to disseminate the information about the Stewards of Children training would be to identify through our Parks and Recreation Department all of the athletic lists and send it out through that. That's
a great idea.
That's an avenue that I think would perhaps target those folks that aren't covered under the law, that have the opportunity to perhaps step in and make a difference in a child's life.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess we'll kind of have to see once we get things going and give this information out there of the Stewards of Children program, how big it's going to be, because it could vary a lot. But I'm hoping we get a lot of public interest, and it sounds like you've had a lot of interest in the past, which is
Yeah, there's a
great.
lot of interest, and especially in schools, because people don't want to be, everybody wants to sort of, now that the issue has been brought to light, people are trying to be vigilant about it.
Yeah.
Well, I think if we did like a press conference or something like that, too, that would spark
Mhm.
people like this.
Okay, so school-wide interventions we talked about last time. So this is actually part of this program called Shifting Boundaries, and there's a class portion and then a school-wide interventions portion. And I think I brought up last time how the data has shown that actually the class portion of it alone does not really make a difference, but when you add in these school-wide interventions like posters, hotspot mapping, and respecting boundaries agreement, that they found a huge reduction in sexual violence perpetration and sexual harassment. So in a study in New York where they implemented this in about 30 schools, they found that there was a 40% reduction in sexual violence perpetration and a 34% reduction in sexual harassment. So those, that's huge. So, and they're pretty easy to implement.
And they did both, the education and.
That was, so they kind of divided it up. So they had one group that just did the school-wide interventions, one group that did class plus school-wide interventions, and then one without. And the school-wide interventions plus the class portion, there wasn't a difference between the interventions plus class and just the school-wide interventions. So just with these school-wide interventions, they found that reduction rate. Sorry, I think there's a... So these are some posters that I found that I think would be helpful just to kind of have up to show support for victims and to encourage those victims to speak out. So I kind of I have these bystander intervention, which is really important. So just having these up in the schools, someone sees that they've been a victim of sexual abuse, and it just kind of gives them that assurance that they can tell someone that they will be believed, and that they have a voice. So if the schools are interested, or even around the township, around the community, maybe having some of these posters for people to see. I don't know how you guys feel about that. If that's something you'd be interested in. But I'm happy to print some of these off.
With all the facilities that we have, parks and buildings and
Parks might be the good.
Mhm.
when we have a group of people,
Mhm.
we have a lot of facilities that a lot of people travel through them on a regular basis.
Mhm.
Okay.
And a lot of times the restrooms
Oh,
are
that's a good
natural
one.
area that's, it's inside, it's protected from
Right.
the weather.
Also, on Darkness to Light, does posters, and they give them, I could probably get a whole bunch of them and distribute them to you.
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah.
So at the parks, is this something that would have to, in terms of the schools, you would have to get approved and?
I would just want to check with our principal in the building, but I think it's
Okay.
something we can absolutely support.
Okay.
It's just, a lot of times too, getting the student groups involved in it too, like our student council and some of our national honor society, some of those that really push some of, because they have individual groups that meet within, we have different student-run groups that I think could be supportive in helping push the message in terms of posters and such, because, they have the interactions, they're talking a lot about a lot of different issues, so I think that's a good avenue to do that. So I just want to have those conversations to do what the, but we have poster places in all of our buildings,
Mhm.
that again, kids don't necessarily look at, because there's a lot
Yeah.
of other stuff that are on those boards, so, but I absolutely think we can support it, and hopefully by looking at some of those key groups of kids, then we can, decide where the best place would be, like bathrooms or the common areas or
Because
those types of things.
that bystander intervention one, when I look at that one, I think that some of the groups that you have meeting already, the Black Student Union, the message is one that really carries across boundaries of
Mhm.
different types of harassment
Yeah.
and kind of bad behavior in general. that-
Exactly.
That would, LGBT protections, and I think that message carries even wider audience than specifically sexual assault-prevention, which is a positive for.
Yeah. Yeah, bullying and
Right.
sexual harassment, both.
Right.
All right. So, yeah, I like the bystander one.
I like the We
Oops.
Believe You one too.
Sorry, I just.
We have a group of teens that we work with, they meet monthly. So it started out as a book club, but it does, the kids are very active in it, and they come up with posters and T-shirts and things like that, that I think that getting kids involved in school in their own groups would be a very good way to get the message across, because their messages might be different than what we would think, you know. So I think it's really important to get the young people actively involved in disseminating their messages.
Okay. Hotspot mapping, we talked about this last time, and I did send out some information on exactly what the hotspot mapping is and how to implement it. The objectives are to identify exact locations in the school where students feel hot, or basically unsafe or uncomfortable, and where they feel cool or safe, comfortable, or welcoming to them. And this helps students identify those places and provides information to the school in order to develop a cooler or a safer, more comfortable environment for students. It also empowers students to transform those, uncomfortable places into more comfortable or welcoming places. So I won't go so much into this because I did send out specifics of it, of exactly how to administer the hotspot mapping, how to kind of tally it so that you're able to identify those spots. Did anyone have questions on the hotspot mapping?
I think one of the concerns was at the last meeting was kind of like it's an unsafe area.
Unsafe, yeah.
It's not, the way I read it, it's not an unsafe area, it's the student's perception of comfort level. It's more comfort. I don't feel uncomfortable because, it could be because of bullying, not because it's unsafe for another reason. It can be emotionally unsafe area. That's what this is more targeted at. It's not-
Exactly. And so I think kind of saying it in more of a way of comfortable or welcoming versus safe or unsafe.
And I think some of those things, if they were identified, can be remedied relatively easily.
Yeah,
because
very easy.
Saying what our perception and what a student's perception is now is the same thing. If you ask the kids, they can tell you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we were talking about last time, when I was in high school, I knew the areas where kids got bullied and where things kind of happened. So recognizing those places, and it has a list of ways that you can improve the comfort level in them, whether it's increasing the presence of student or of teachers or other staff in that area, lighting, putting posters in that area. Those can all help as well.
Comes a little bit from the concept of law enforcement, SEPTED.
Yeah.
Crime prevention through environmental design, including safe things, and this, putting safe things in perceived unsafe areas. Good activities drive out the bad activities, kind of thing. So.
Yeah. Respecting boundaries agreement. So I sent that out too. There's an actual agreement that if a student feels as though their boundaries were crossed, when they come to like a teacher, other staff member within the school, they can, tell them why they feel like their boundaries were crossed. And they actually fill out this respecting boundaries agreement, which basically goes through, why they felt they were violated. And then the other student is met with, and they fill out their portion of the respecting boundaries agreement. And what you do with that student is you go through the definition of boundaries and discuss ways in which their actions constituted a violation of another student's boundary. And this basically just helps them recognize, maybe they weren't aware that what they were doing was violating another person's boundaries, and so they're able to recognize that and hopefully make changes in their actions to make that other student feel more comfortable.
Also, I think understanding consent, even the very little kids, when you can teach them what they can consent to and what they don't consent to, and what to do in the moment when you're not consenting, that somebody is not respecting you, what you can do, who you can tell, those kinds of things, and just sort of giving them the information that they have the right to say no.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we do a lot of practicing of saying no for kids.
Yeah. The consent training is definitely something that is important, and hopefully will gain some more traction. So kind of going back to proactive bystander, because we're discussing a lot of stuff, I didn't do a whole lot in this, but there are some really great programs like Bringing in the Bystander, Green Dot program, which both focus on promoting a proactive bystander. And so I just wanted to open this up for discussion, and if anybody had ideas on ways that we could, promote being a proactive bystander. And I think one of them is, the posters that we put up. And another idea I was thinking of was just like having a bystander month maybe. So like there's a sexual assault month, having a bystander month. So in that month you discuss in schools what it means to be a proactive bystander. You place posters of proactive bystanders around the school, and you could even make like a pledge or something like that to stand up for someone if you see that they're being bullied or harassed. But I just wanted to open it up and see if you guys had any input.
I think the education through the Stewards of Children will give people an idea of what it means to be a bystander to begin with.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people that don't recognize what that even means, or what should be expected of them
Mm-hmm.
if they recognize something. So I think that will be a good start if the Stewards of Children thing is what we do.
Yeah.
It would be a good educational piece aside from that.
Definitely.
Understanding that you are a bystander and what it means to actually be proactive too.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if we're talking younger people who may not have that understanding of what their responsibilities are as a human being to take care of.
And what they can do safely,
Right.
that's important too. That there is something that you can do that doesn't put you necessarily in jeopardy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, also, I think having a discussion, some sort of education or something with young people, will take the uncool out of being the bystander, or because there's this idea of you don't tell on people and all that. I think that will chip away at that idea that, of what you're expected as a bystander.
Mm-hmm. Do you, at Firecracker Foundation, do you guys have like bystander training?
Yeah, as a part of the Darkness to Light
As part
training,
of
that's
that.
basically what it is. It's a, stewardship, but it's for adults.
For adults, yeah.
Yeah. But, children we don't have a formal program for children just yet, but we could probably develop one pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of that, I think we're addressing a lot of that with the Stewards of Children program. I like the poster of the proactive bystander that we can put in the schools and around the community to kind of influence younger people, and just bring their awareness to it. So I'm going to turn it over to Julie, who's going to talk about some legislative updates. Oh, yeah. Do you want to switch with me, or?
Is it too short? Yeah.
I think so.
Okay, I just want to give a brief update about some legislative changes that have occurred that we heard a little bit about. So in your handouts, if you want to go to page 5, one of the most important things that needs to happen in order to protect survivors is to give survivors enough time to process what has happened to them and to come forward and report the crime. It's like a really, really critical component of protection of survivors. So the good news is that on June 12th, there were 2 bills that were signed into law that do just exactly that. So if you go to page 6, Senate Bill 871, which amends Public Act 182 of 2018. This bill extended the statute of limitations for childhood survivors by allowing charges to be filed within 15 years of an offense, after an offense is committed, or by the survivor's 28th birthday. And that changed from, before that it was 10 years after the offense or the 21st birthday, whichever was later. And there's really a big difference between a 21-year-old and a 28-year-old. And one of the difficulties with the previous law was that if a child was abused, you know, if you can imagine a 5, 6, 7-year-old child being abused, probably by a family member or a close family friend, being able to process that, become an adult, and recognize, wait a minute, that was wrong, I need to do something about that. By the time you're 21, you're really not that old yet. I have two 21-year-olds, and you don't really have the full maturity and the establishment of yourself as a separate person from your family life at that point, often to be able to do that. So extending it to age 28 was something really positive, but it had been really weakened from its initial introduction into the Senate. It had been a stronger bill to begin with, but that's what was enacted into law. The other piece is the statute of limitations for the civil cases. And on page 7, you'll see that Senate Bill 872 also passed and was signed into law. And that one extended the statute of limitations to 10 years for the ability to recover damages sustained because of criminal sexual conduct. Again, this bill allows childhood survivors to file cases to recover damages by the time they're 28 years old. So again, good news, but perhaps didn't go far enough. That Senate Bill 872, it also had a retroactive component that went back to 1997, but it didn't include, it ended up being very narrowly defined, and it was only retroactive for survivors who had been abused by now convicted physicians under the guise of medical treatment. Unfortunately, the survivors that had been lobbying the lawmakers really wanted to make a pathway clear for all survivors, not just survivors of Larry Nassar, and unfortunately they were unsuccessful with that. So even with these changes, which were great changes to occur, Michigan still ranks among the more restrictive states in terms of allowing survivors access to the justice system. There are some other bills that are out there that are pending, and if you go to page 10, the first one, this is what we talked about earlier today, House Bill 5659. This one had originally introduced, included coaches and assistant coaches as mandatory reporters, but that provision was stripped out of the law that was passed by the bill that was passed by the House. And it was really only...
I'm sorry. Why was it taken out? What was the conversation surrounding that? That would seem like a logical route to lead a report.
I would agree with you, Chief Hall. So the only coaches that are